Well, this is another Confessions podcast. Thank you for downloading. We have some more terrible tales here from the very bad Radio 2 audience. Much sinning continues to carry on. So this week we have a pathetic Pilates performance, a bare bod on the beach, a slice of secretarial sass, and a moment of mitten mischief. All coming up in the next few moments. This is good. Anyway, it's the confession music, and the collective are in, and tonight's tale comes from, let me just double-check this. It's Kurt, that's who it is. Hello, Kurt, dear Father Simon, and the Merciful Collective. I go back to about 2004, when, as a divorced man of 46, living in a small village, I decided I needed to sort out my pathetic, sad little life. Health and fitness was writ large in my mind as the starting point. Ugh. It was no big deal, I thought. I'd been toying with the idea of easing my way back into fitness with dignity. Years of following a philosophy of manana had taken their toll, on what had been for a long time a slim-toned swimmer's physique. So when the leaflet landed on my doormat, I was delighted. I had toyed with Eastern philosophy in my youth and martial arts, and it seemed the natural progression for me to embrace yoga. If you want an easy route to body beautiful, yoga, I mused, must surely be the one. Crossed legs and breathing heavily, I could do. The Pilates bit was new, but having seen what it did for Kylie, I was as keen as mustard. I rang and promised to attend. My bravado was diminished a little on the day when the other students began arriving at the village hall. There was not a single bloke aside from me, all women. Still, I thought as I pulled my shoulders back, sucked in my tummy and adopted a friendly fixed grin, I'm a boy no longer. They don't intimidate me. Small groups of chattering women encompassing a wide range of ages formed around the registration table, all laughing. I hung back, wandering the creaking wooden floor of the old building, examining with exaggerated interest memorial plaques and the fly-blown photos of parish councillors, long dead. Whether it was my imagination or not, I don't know, but when I did come to the notice of one of the women, they looked directly at me with sort of citrus-lipped disapproval, with a sort of "what's a man doing here?" look, caused me to flush. I like to think of myself as pretty confident, but mustering the walk was difficult. Brazenly, but now on leaden legs, I stiffly walked to the table, my affable grin fixed in place. I have to tell you, our instructor was gorgeous, with the flattest stomach I'd seen in a long time. Our combined average age was 40+, mirroring, I believe, the majority of waist sizes present in the class. The instructor clapped her hands and marshalled us into position. Each of us stood on our individual exercise mats facing her. A wide variety of clothing reflected the personalities of my companions. In front of me, the lady was well-groomed and wearing expensive jewellery. She had what looked like the queen of exercise mats, sleek and shiny and covered in logos. My scruffy jogging pants and torn and tattered shirt under too small fleece had already, I was sure, badged me as man trash. To the other side, a lady of around 60 looked very businesslike in shorts and rugby shirt. Oh, and over to the other side of me, one of the youngsters stood expectantly for the session to start. Her cut-off T-shirt and joggers, pulled in at the waist, proclaimed her youth and vitality as if to say, "Where am I? Oh, I'm here. That's right, I'm here to show off." So I glowered at her. The instructor clapped her hands to get her attention. Eagerly, I awaited the command to sit down. I had been practising cross-legged sitting for a while and was pretty sure I could hold my own against even the youngest. Unfortunately, that command was to be a long time coming. The instructor began. She directed her attention, it seemed, at everyone but me, and the reason why was soon to become clear. Only women can do it. Pilates and yoga, that is. I knew I'd never heard of it before, but from the very onset, the vocabulary being used had me at a severe disadvantage. Now, I know I possess a pelvis, but I've never thought of it as being anything other than a funny-shaped bone from which my legs hang. However, my companions were quite happy with the notion of tilting their pelvis this way and tilting it that way until they had actually managed to centre it. How on earth do you centre your pelvis? I had to learn quickly. In a parody of Elvis, I did what I thought was required, and I'm sure I heard a snort from somewhere behind me. More bewildering stuff was to come. Next, we needed to focus on our core. Oh. What on earth does that mean? To my satisfaction, I have to admit there were a few blank stares from others in the room. I raised my hand, attracting the instructor's attention, as well as everyone else. Expectantly, they waited to see what the man was going to ask. What is a pelvic floor exercise, please, miss? The instructor seemed to be struggling with an appropriate response. Had colour risen to her cheeks? Are you married? Divorced, I whispered and shrugged in apology, expecting someone to boo or hiss. Children? 2. Well, it's what your wife did after giving birth. She turned away from me. Now, ladies, we move on. Blankly, I struggled to make sense of what she'd said. She couldn't possibly mean swearing, because that's...
Yeah.
Because that's what my wife did.
Yeah.
I turned to look at the rugby-shirted lady. Out of the corner of her mouth, she said, "Squeeze the cheeks of your bottom." I did as asked, and squeezing the cheeks of my bum together, I tried to follow the warming-up exercises as shown, but it just didn't feel natural to me. Well, the hell, where was the lotus position? That's what I come for. Where was the meditation I needed? The torture continued for what seemed like hours, until eventually the main humiliation. Relieved to finally be allowed to sit down, I was stunned to hear her ask to sit on our sitting bones.
Very good.
After further discussion at the front, I was enlightened, though not comforted. Sitting on one's sitting bone apparently requires the sitter to reach down and pull the cheek of each buttock out to the side as far as it will go. Are you trying this now while you're...
Yeah, we are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Assuming that you're wearing a pair of lycra knickers, that might be achievable, but if your bottom is encased in a tautly stretched pair of boxers, it isn't possible. Especially if the agony of clenching your cheeks together is bringing tears to your eyes in the first place. Rugby-shirted woman intervened. "Unclench your bottom," she said again.
Is that a woman?
Yeah, sorry.
Do it again. Try it again. Oh,
Unclench your bottom.
that's better.
The end could not come quickly enough for me, and I couldn't wait to get back in the car for a fag. However, we couldn't leave until we'd had our quiet time. You'd have loved this, Matt.
This is right up my alley.
Lying flat on my
Quiet.
back with my eyes closed, I listened to the Indian chanting on the CD and paid attention to the instructor's commands. I told my face to relax and allow my nose and eyebrows to slide off it. Disconcerting if you believe it'll actually really happen, but that's what they were saying. My breathing slowed and my eyelids dissolved upon command. I gave myself up to the gods of relaxation and all became blank. I awoke at the prod of her toe. I looked dreamily into the instructor's face. "You're not meant to snore," she smiled. Now, I have to beg forgiveness not for struggling with the foreign notion of sitting bones or centering my core. I don't beg forgiveness for polluting the air of the village hall with testosterone that day, a clearly invasive act from the reactions of the other ladies. Now, I beg forgiveness from my fellow males. Virtually every stereotype my fellow yoga students must have had about men was confirmed for them when, in my stomach-straining, groaning struggle to lever my awkward, over-exercised body up to my feet, a significant, loud and long wind event echoed around the hall from inside my faded joggers. There was absolutely no acknowledgement of this either from myself or the purse-lipped throng around me. Just that intimidating silence of disapproval that groups of women can manufacture at will. As I hurried out, I was sure I heard a voice say, "No wonder he's divorced." I fled, and I never went back. Guys, I let the side down, and for that, I can only ask for your forgiveness. Well, Kurt tried, and he went for it, but it is one of those things about how do you sit on your sitting bone? And clearly the language is not designed for guys. This is what his conclusion is. Sister Rebecca, what do you think?
I just have to disagree with that because, well, I think probably Kurt had never been... He got confused between yoga and Pilates, I think, by the sound of it, because it sounds like they were doing Pilates. There are loads of people... I go to Pilates, there are loads of blokes in my class, so I think you can't generalise like that.
Do you get asked to sit on your sitting bone?
You do, sit on your sit bones, you can roll like a ball... Things like that. Really? But it's not to do with men and women, is it? No. I was surprised that Kurt had been married and had, was it 2 kids?
Well, his wife
didn't know
the wife
about the pelvic floor.
No, right.
Was quite surprised about that. So maybe that is something to do with the fact that they got divorced. I think he should have gone running or done another sport. Yeah. I don't think it was suitable for him, but I don't think it's an anti-man thing. So I'm not going to forgive you, Kurt.
No forgiveness for Kurt. Let's see what Deadly makes.
I give him. Yeah, I forgive him, of course. Yeah, I mean, don't, fellow males, don't apologise for confirming everyone's opinion of a stereotype when you're a bloke. You're a bloke, and therefore you fulfil the requirements.
Have you ever done Pilates?
Of course. I did them just before I came in. Citrus-lipped, I like that expression.
Yes, that was nice.
That was really nice.
Do you know where your core is?
Yeah. You're not seeing it. And talking about, I mean, he goes in and talks about cross-legged and heavy breathing. I mean, what can you expect? So I forgive him. Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe there's going to be a male-female divide here.
Yeah, absolutely. He's very brave to have a go, I think.
It's 1-1, Matthew.
I have to say, one of the things that's put me off going to Pilates or yoga or whatever is the unexpected event kind of thing. Because you think that's just bound to happen, and it's bound to be in a room full of people where it's otherwise silent. So I I think really he misread what was going to be. I mean, if you're going to go to one of those classes for the first time, go to a beginner class. Don't go to a class where everyone knows what's centering your core and dripping your eyeballs off or whatever. Don't go to the advanced one. Go to the one where
stand at the back and watch.
Exactly. Yes. Well, actually, don't do that because that other connotations. Anyway, so I'm going to say I am not forgiving.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks very much. We got there. Hey, look, it's 18 minutes to 6, a Drive Time Confession. The Collective is here. For the first time, it's novice Will, really. And are you a forgiving person, really, Will?
Why are you laughing?
Sorry.
I'm forgiving if I can see the person and look deep into their eyes. So in this instance, it's going to be difficult.
Not going to happen. Matt not here because he's had to go to a BBC course management thing.
Do you forgive him?
Whatever that is. No, because it's Liverpool-Everton tonight, and I suspect that's what he's doing.
This feature is already 25% quieter.
It's true. Marcus from the Midlands has sent in tonight's tale. Thank you, Marcus. Dear Father Simon and the incredibly compassionate, forgiving and broad-minded collective. I think that apologies may well be overdue to a resort full of holidaymakers whose holiday might have been somewhat spoiled as a result of my actions and who might still be receiving therapy as a result. The sorry saga took place about this time just over 4 years ago in the run-up to a big birthday. Won't say which one, but it started with a 5 and it ended with a 0. I was in need of some cheering up, as I was rather depressed at the thought, and at this point, in stepped my dear friend Jack, so I suggest that the blame lies with him throughout. He asked if I might like to join him and his partner on a trip to Thailand. Well, I accepted gleefully. After a few days in Bangkok, Jack's partner was heading north to Chiang Mai, and Jack and I were planning to head south to a small, little-known island where there was only one resort in which we planned to rent a beach bungalow. Jack and I were looking forward to idyllic days, lounging on a hot beach, swimming and drinking lemonade as the sun set over an unspoiled, west-facing, tree-fringed beach. A complete change from Weston-super-Mare, which is the traditional summer destination for all Brummies. We flew down to this is according to Marcus. We flew down to a port in the south where a long-tailed boat was waiting to take us to our island. After a long flight on a scorching day, we chugged out into the Andaman Sea, past volcanic islands until our own palm-fringed paradise hove into view. We jumped into the water with our cases, waded to shore, the warm water lapping at our ankles. This was heaven. The beach bungalow was idyllic, meters from the waterline, across a beach of soft white sand, 2 good-sized bedrooms with air conditioning, and a front open terrace where you could sit and watch the pale white British tourists turning themselves into ripe tomatoes. I donned my Speedos and set off for a swim in the sea, which was as warm as bath water and as blue as a gemstone. Now, you might be thinking at this point that someone who's just approaching 50 should not be wearing Speedos.
That's what I was going through my mind, that was, yeah.
It's always a fine call, says Marcus. The jury is still out as to whether Speedo wearing should stop at 25. Actually, Marcus, It's not. It's not out at all. It is already declared. Having taken a judgment, I decided that I could get away with it, as, despite not being particularly tall, I had a pretty snappy waist for someone at the wrong end of his 40s.
Snappy?
Yes. The very attractive male half of the impossibly beautiful French couple in the bungalow next door could get away with Speedos, despite being 25 years younger than me, but less hairy, so why couldn't I? Because you're nearly 50, Marcus, that's why. After that first day, we spent a wonderful, relaxing week doing all the traditional beach things with other families. We walked along the beach, we played frisbee, it was very hot, there was little need to wear anything other than just my Speedos. Although I did draw the line at wearing them in the beach restaurant, I do have standards, you know, low they may be, but I do have standards. So usually I changed into clean shorts and a T-shirt before going into the restaurant, except on the last day. On that particular day, Jack had ordered some drinks, a couple of Black Russians, as I recall, which we planned to drink as we watched the sun go down from the beach for the last time. Before the drinks were ready, Jack went back to the bungalow to get his book, and while he was gone, I saw the barman wave to me from the back of the restaurant to indicate our drinks were ready. It was dinner time, and everyone was seated at the tables ordering food and drinking at the end of the day. A happy holiday scene. I was only wearing my Speedos. But I decided it wouldn't matter if I quickly nipped in and nipped out again, which I did. Got the drinks, walked past tables of diners eating their food, came out again. However, I had the strangest feeling of being looked at and sensing that something wasn't quite right. Jack returned to the beach and we settled down to enjoy our drinks in the sunset. Next day, we were leaving.
As I was marvellous intake of breath. I love that.
As I was packing up on the front porch, I rinsed out my Speedos, and as I was putting them on the rail to dry, I noticed something surprising. They had gone quite thin at the back. I then held them up to the light and realised that actually they hadn't gone thin. They'd gone completely and totally transparent. And it was at that moment that the awful truth dawned. I had spent a whole week wandering about the beach, playing frisbee, walking among all the holidaymakers, wearing Speedos that were backless, leaving my derriere completely on show. I'd been inadvertently mooning people, and worst of all, my hirsute bottom had traipsed in and out of the restaurant at dinner time between tables of diners. A nearly 50-year-old man wandering past your table does not, I am sure, enhance your appetite.
People are trying to eat.
I asked Jack why he hadn't told me. He said, I did tell you on the first day when you changed. I said they were very daring. Indeed, it was true. I just thought he was being a prude. So, dear broad-minded and merciful collective, I have to apologise to all the holiday-making families on the beach at Koh Korn for being the middle-aged man who wandered around shamelessly all week with his bottom on show, and particularly to those people in the restaurant whom I wafted past barefaced. I hope that you have recovered from the shock and that you're now out of therapy. Dear collective, may I be forgiven? It was Jack's fault, really. They like their full moon parties in Thailand.
Absolutely.
So what do you say to Marcus from the Midlands, sister relation?
Well, I think I'm going to be a little bit controversial here, and it's just my personal opinion, okay? But I cannot stand, Speedos. I think Speedos are a no-no even for the younger man. So Speedos on a 50-year-old man, see-through or not, snappy waist or not, they're just never going to work, are they?
So whatever the circumstances.
Yeah, whatever the circumstances. I think maybe on European men it's a different matter, but I don't know. Speedos and British men, do they got it? I don't know.
I think you'll find Britain's in Europe. Let's be
That's
clear
true.
about it.
I mean continental. I don't know
So
what
it's
it is.
different for
Just my
Italians.
personal
That's
opinion.
That's what
So I'm not going to forgive you.
God, you normally forgive.
So
You're
it's all
normally
right for men from some countries, but not from people. Okay, deadly. I would take offence at that.
Yeah, note to self, throw them away.
Anna, before you answer, have you ever worn Speedos before?
Oh, God, yeah. What time is it now? About an hour ago. About an hour ago.
What do you say?
I've levered myself. What are you saying about? Years ago, admittedly, I've levered myself into Speedos. Have you not? You must have done. Have you got them on now?
No.
Well, there we are. I am going to be. I'm just going to carry on anyway.
Do you think you're in a bar or something?
I think I could. It's the atmosphere on this show. It's so friendly. Usually. Where's Matt when you need him? I'm going to forgive, I think, because it was Jack's fault. It was Jack. Yes, he's pointed it out the once, but on the second or third, possibly 50th occasion. Are you sure you're... Yeah, exactly. Just put it in those terms. I can see your bottom is the word that you corrected me there, because I was going to say something else.
So it's a decider.
Okay, yes, it's 1-1 at the moment. It'll go to the people's vote, but what do you think, Will?
If he had been travelling on a short-tailed boat... I would have gone with Unforgivable, but if it's a long-tailed boat,
you can get away with anything.
He's from Birmingham. Marcus sounds like he's got it, so he should flaunt it, and I think he should be fully and utterly forgiven.
But perhaps keep it to Weston-super-Mare in future. What do you think?
So here's tonight's tale, which comes from Freya. Thank you very much indeed for tonight's confession. Dear Father Simon and the Merciful Collective, I seek forgiveness for something that happened over 30 years ago when I was a callow girl trying to make my way in life against difficult odds. Since the age of 12, I had nurtured a desire to work in the theatre. I applied myself diligently to my studies, involved myself in local theatre groups, helped paint the set for our local Amdram group, until during my time at Sixth Form College, I was offered a place at a renowned and prestigious drama school in London, far away from the provincial city in which I lived. Well, I was thrilled. Visions of a life on the stage beckoned. Lots of beret wearing.
Yep.
I excitedly told my parents of my good fortune. Sadly, they were less than bowled over. Wanting only the best for me, they had envisioned a more secure profession and desperately wanted me to be a secretary. Long story short, they agreed to give me their blessing on the understanding that I took a secretarial course at the college prior to taking up my place at drama school the following year. Reluctantly, I enrolled on said course. From the start, it was clear that I was a round peg in a very square hole. This was the mid-1970s, and I dressed in the appropriate style of the day, yellow loons, as I believe they were called, and a variety of smock tops. Very nice. My fellow course participants affected the more conventional style of a secretary, mainly smart dresses or twin sets. I stood out like a sore thumb. My progress on the course was slow, and somehow I infuriated my teacher, a short, fierce woman, who I will call Mrs. Brown. Mrs. Brown believed in training us not just to be elite secretaries, but also as useful wives. She was particularly irritated by my then-boyfriend, a charming hippie called Dave, who had blonde hair down to his waist, and wore an army greatcoat summer and winter alike. I think I've taken against Dave as well. He used to come and pull faces at me through the window when I was struggling with my rudimentary shorthand, which she felt was a little forward. Once in a complete fury, she yelled at me, "You are a disgrace, you will never find a nice husband," which was for her the biggest insult that she could think of.
I say.
You will have gathered by now that I failed to take the course seriously. However, my typing was good and I managed to pass the exams. My shorthand was appalling, but I did learn a few basics. So fast forward a couple of years, drama school went well, but having graduated, it was difficult to find a job. This was during a time when it was fairly easy to pick up temporary secretarial jobs, and I approached an employment bureau which tested my typing speed, but made the mistake of taking my word for the proficiency of my shorthand. They secured me a week's work with a marketing agency. The people there were lovely. I was installed at a desk with an impressive typewriter and a series of notebooks and pens. Midway through the morning, the head of the agency called me in to take some letters. Having checked I was comfortable, he proceeded to dictate at breakneck speed some complicated correspondence. With the optimism of youth, I scribbled down what I could, but halfway through it became clear to me that I was in really big trouble. By this time, I was reduced to making scrawls and shapes on the notepad. Yeah. Remember, however, I had trained in the dramatic arts, and my improvisation of efficient secretary was second to none. I'd even dressed for the part with my hair in a bun. I was a credit to Mrs. Brown. Finally, my new boss, who had noticed nothing amiss, beamed at me and said, "Well, my dear, if you could have those ready for me to sign at 4:30, that would be splendid."
Yeah.
They all spoke like that in
the 1970s, yeah. My dear. Yes.
I returned to my desk and impressive typewriter with a heavy heart. I started to type "Dear Sirs," and then ground to a miserable halt. No matter which way up I held the notebook, I couldn't make any sense of anything. I tried to remember some of what had been said, but it was just stupid. By about 2 p.m, I had completely given up, and I had absolutely no idea what to do. I decided to give myself a rest, and I went to the loo. Now, the office had a very strange layout with very twisty stairs, broken into several short flights. As I contemplated my fate, an idea occurred to me. What if I fell down the stairs?
What?
I wouldn't injure myself too badly, but I might get out of it.
Bit extreme.
Desperate thoughts, but I was young, in a panic, and it seemed like a good idea at the time. The best news of all was that I knew how to fall properly because of my drama school training. So I came out of the loo, I stood poised at the top of the short flight of stairs and hurled myself forward, landing in a complicated and undignified heap at the bottom, secretly completely unhurt. It was a spectacular dive worthy of any stunt artist. I was actually very proud of it. There was a scrabble of people who, having heard the noise and screams appeared from the main office, came to my aid. Drawing on all my theatrical skills, I groaned and I hobbled and limped till someone insisted on calling an ambulance. At the hospital, a cursory glance at my leg revealed no injury, but they were kind enough to supply me with an elasticated bandage, just in case, and I made my way home. I rang the employment agency to explain that I had a sprained knee and could not return to my post. I vaguely mentioned that there was some unfinished work in my notebook, but did not expand on this, and can only hope that my employers thought my scribbles were an exotic form of shorthand, which I would have transcribed with aplomb if I'd been given the chance and not fallen terribly down the stairs. So it's clear I need forgiveness on a number of levels. First and foremost to the lovely staff at the marketing agency, who were so concerned about my injury. I left them with a pile of letters that could never ever be transcribed. To the hard-working medical staff whose time I completely wasted, and to the employment bureau who got me the job for being so rubbish and for jeopardising their reputation. Excuse me. Finally, an apology is due to Mrs. Brown, my former teacher, for being such a disgrace to secretaries everywhere. However, she was wrong on the husband front. I managed to snag a perfectly good one. But only at the second time of asking. The first one was rubbish. Which in retrospect served me right, says Freya. Well, there you go. An interesting diversion at the end. See, the drama skills are never wasted. If you're completely stuck, you've messed up, you don't know what to do, clearly, theatrically tumble and see what happens.
See, I was going to say the secretarial skills are never wasted. They'll be useful for the rest of your life.
Yes.
Both. I've been in that situation. I really, really feel for you, Freya, because, I've been in that situation, been asked to dictate a letter, and my shorthand just wasn't up to it. And I was too... And Matt's
I've done it.
I was, too scared to fess up.
Did you throw yourself on the floor?
I didn't throw myself on the floor, actually. I can't remember what I said. I think I just said my shorthand's not actually as good as I thought it was. I'm really sorry. I think it was a bit extreme of her to throw herself down the stairs. She could have really hurt herself. I mean, she could have just said she'd lost her notebook or something like that. But no, I think it was very funny and it shows real ingenuity. And so I'm going going to forgive.
Top acting skills from Freya. What do you think, Matt?
So, apparently on drama courses, they teach you how to fall.
Of course.
No, I've never heard of this. Where's the module? Right, we're going to take you to the top of these stairs. Throw yourselves off, Nathan.
It's the judo module.
Yeah, obviously. It's the one where we're not doing any acting today, so we're just going to throw ourselves down the stairs. Because apparently that's a course. Well, who'd have thought? Yet
Your
again,
prejudice is
my
showing.
prejudice against drama students comes to the fore, wasting their time with berets and black polo necks. And but also, I've been in that situation with the shorthand, and often you can't work out whether it's meant to say stable or thimble or whatever. So I am definitely going to forgive, because we've all been there, apart from at the top of stairs, thinking that we can fall down and not get out of it.
Justin Green, who studied drama, says you do need to learn how to fall, and it is a skill that you need.
I can't believe that.
So there.
They're padding the course out. Move on.
Yeah, well, we're going to do that. And who's this? This is from Tim. Tim sends in tonight's story, and we welcome Novice Nige back in, what with it being Thursday as well. Dear Forgiving Foursome, I have noticed that there have been several animal-related confessions recently, so I would like to follow the trend and submit my own. Now, 5 years ago, I became interested in car detailing. For the uninitiated, car detailing basically involves cleaning a car to obsessive standards, using such techniques as cleaning out the dirt from nooks and crannies using Q-tips. Other makes of ear-cleaning cotton buds are available. Blasting dirt off the car with a pressure washer. Snow foaming. That sounds like one of your Friday fixtures.
Yes, snow foaming,
Are you out doing snow foaming? Engine bay detailing, mopping, buffing and glazing.
Tim, not forgiven.
No.
It's an amazing amount of work. I just thought car wash would be fine. There you go. Pay the kids to do it. There you go. 50p. Well done. There are various levels of detailing, ranging from just doing a decent job to making every surface of the car so clean it would embarrass the local operating theatre at the local hospital. Well, the reasons for my interest in this subject are long and boring, so I won't go into them, but suffice to say, I found a certain amount of satisfaction returning a grubby, ordinary, everyday car to showroom condition, and it's a hobby I still indulge in today.
Okay.
There you go. Just setting the background. This is what he does.
Yep.
One of the essential tools of the car detailer is the mitt, M-I-T-T. This is usually a lamb's wool or microfiber glove that you can use to wash the car with instead of a sponge. The theory is that a sponge can trap dirt in between the car's paintwork and the sponge, which then creates micro scratches in the paintwork. This is what you've been missing, Nigel. Micro scratches in the paintwork as you move the sponge across the car. Over time, these scratches dull the finish of the paint. The mitt, however, will envelop the dirt. It will envelop it all, trapping it away in the long fibres and holding the dirt away from your paintwork. There is so much more to cleaning your car than you ever realised. So it was, on a Sunday afternoon not so long ago, I found myself happily washing my car using a grey lamb's wool mitt that forms the backdrop of this story. The mitt itself was quite old, and I noticed that as I was sweeping it across the bonnet, great lumps of wool were detaching from the mitt and becoming trapped in the various nooks and crannies of the car. I rinsed the car off and set about removing all the stringy lumps of wool from the car. I plucked out a particularly large piece from the bonnet vent and threw it on the floor. "Ew, what's that?" said a disgusted voice from behind me, and I turned around to find my eldest daughter, who'd been sent out with a cup of tea for me. She was pointing at the lump of bedraggled grey wool that I'd just thrown unceremoniously onto the floor, and it just missed her foot. Now, I have to confess that I have a mischief fairy that no one else can see, but which occasionally perches on my shoulder and encourages me to say and do things that perhaps I shouldn't. This Sunday afternoon, the mischief fairy was indeed in residence, and it whispered the perfect response in my ear. "Oh, that, yes. It's just a dead mouse I found in Mum's car, actually." Now, I have to point out, I can't possibly, anyway. I have to point out that my eldest daughter is usually a level-headed gal, not prone to outbursts of emotion or fits of silliness. She can usually spot one of my wind-ups a mile off. But for some reason this afternoon, she didn't realise that I was pulling her leg, and the shocked expression on her face was exactly the response that the mischief fairy was looking for. It whispered into my ear again, "Don't tell Mum." I leant in closer and I've already dropped my voice, I can't do anything, to a conspiratorial whisper. "I think she's got a nest of mice in her car somewhere. I've found absolutely loads of dead mice the last 5 or 6 times I've cleaned her car." Well, 3 things then happened that I was not prepared for. 1. The cup of tea exploded on the drive as my eldest daughter dropped it. 2. Whilst running away at a very impressive turn of speed, that I wish she'd employ when getting out of bed in the mornings, she let out a scream that was probably heard 5 miles away. And 3. Several neighbours came to their front doors to find out who was being murdered in the avenue. Smiling sheepishly at my neighbours and mentally flicking the mischief fairy off my shoulder.
Yeah, well done.
I made my way indoors to make my peace with my daughter, only to be confronted by a towering fury of malevolence that can only be described as my wife with a serious cob on. My daughter had already poured out the story to my wife, and no amount of pleading or persuading would convince her that I was just doing a wind-up. The ensuing argument about my insensitivity. It was only now that I found out that my eldest daughter was bitten at school by the hamster some years previously and had developed a phobia against all things small and furry as a result. And also the fact that I had supposedly left my wife's car a mouse-infested vehicle for several months without telling her. This was resolved 3 days later by the trading in of her car to a newer car. Wow. How about that? That's a result. That's forgiveness right there. To this day, neither my wife... Now, here's the thing. You'd imagine you just come clean and say, to this day, says Tim, neither my wife nor my daughter knows this and has realised that it was just a silly prank that went wrong, and now is the time I have to ask for forgiveness, but not from my wife, because she got a new car. But more my daughter, who didn't realise that her silly old dad was just following the suggestions of the mischief fairy. I didn't know that you had a phobia, darling, against small rodents. Honest. Which she'd had for a number of years, I hope you noticed, but she hadn't twigged with Tim. Needless to say, I've also had words with the mischief fairy who's... I think we know quite enough about Tim, actually, yeah. Enough of the mischief fairy there, Tim. I think it's time to take responsibility. So a number of things there. Well, but most striking of the fact is that he didn't know that his daughter had been bitten by a hamster and that she had a phobia of all things sort of mousy.
Totally
like
agree
that.
with that.
Yeah, what's happening there?
How can you not know that?
Well, he's too busy polishing his car and a buffing and a mopping.
His car. Yes. I don't get as well, why did he not just tell his wife that it was a joke? I don't really understand that.
But you see, his is the best bit, because she had turned into a towering fury of malevolence.
Not forever. I mean,
maybe
he could have
forever.
told her later.
Maybe
forever.
Maybe she was.
Well, she got a new car out of it, so in a way, I mean, she didn't lose out. But I think, he's just trying to blame this mischief fairy thing, which I think is rather ridiculous. I think possibly he spends a bit too much time with his buffers on. I think, I'm not going to forgive you, Tim, sorry.
OK, let's see what the novice makes of it all.
Dear me, didn't it? Lamb's wool mitt, car detailing, it's to say hamster phobia's unaware of.
Had you heard of detailing before?
Never, and I don't ever want to hear about it again. I have to say, for a man whose car is probably a mobile ashtray, I'm not proud of that, but really, gosh, life's too short. Absolutely, no. And you're still doing your detailing, Tim, as well. Mischief fairy Tim, no, absolutely not forgiven.
I hope you can string a sentence together by 6 o'clock.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Chinese food on the way, but see if that calms young Matthew.
I'm sure I speak for the nation when I say that we went against Tim from the moment he started explaining in detail how his mitt works. And then as soon as the words mischief fairy came up, case closed, sunshine, you're going down. How do you not know that your daughter's been bit by a hamster? How do you not know that?
You've got a car to clean.
Exactly, he's cleaning his car.
See that exhaust
bitten
pipe?
by who knows what. And now he's going, oh yeah, there's loads of them in the car, by the way. The thing you use all day. So I am not going to forgive Tim, and I know that the nation will join us in saying you're not forgiven.
Well, that was it. Who did you forgive? Let us know, and send your own tale. Heaven alone knows you've got loads of them. confessions@bbc.co.uk. And more in a week. Don't forget to download the Weekly Mayo. That's available now and every Thursday. So much to choose from.